We are 100 days away from Stranger Things 5 releasing. I can't believe I'm saying that, but that is 100% true. November 26th is 100 days away as of August 18th. And in honor of that, I'm posting a YouTube video for the first time in 11 days because I was sick. And today we're going to be talking about characters who are going to die, but not just die in Stranger Things. We're going to be talking about the characters who are most likely to sacrifice themselves in Stranger Things 5. So not just die, but sacrifice themselves. So if these characters do die, I believe it will be a sacrifice for someone else. Of course, before we get into the video, be sure to drop a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and join my Discord down below where we have over 1,200 members and we talk about Stranger Things and other TV shows every single day. And without further ado, let's get right into the video. So first things first, one thing we have to note before I talk about the 5 characters I have written down that could potentially sacrifice themselves in season 5 is that a lot of the deaths that have been in Stranger Things have actually already been sacrifices. For example, in season 1, we had one sacrifice, which was Benny. Not really a sacrifice intentionally, but he got in the way of the people and gave Eleven enough time to run away. I would view that as a sacrifice, but you could also just view that as murder. And then another one is Bob in season 2. He sacrificed himself for sure because he was like turning off the cameras in Hawkins' lab or whatever he was doing, where he was the only one who knew how to work the cameras because of his, you know, he's a nerd, Bob the Brain or whatever. So, and Bob sacrificed himself in season 2. And then Alexei didn't really sacrifice himself. Billy sacrificed himself, but unintentionally, you know? Well, actually not unintentionally, but he sacrificed himself for Eleven because remember, he was going to sacrifice Eleven to the Mind Flayer, and then Eleven like looked him in the eyes when she was laying down and like reminded Billy of his past, saying she was wearing, like talking about Billy's mother, she was wearing this, she was wearing that, she was beautiful, you were so happy, and Billy cried, and then Billy put Eleven down and then sacrificed himself to the Mind Flayer. So he did intentionally sacrifice himself in the very end, but he was never planning on that. So there's been 2 real sacrifices, and then so far, and then in season 4, Eddie sacrificed himself as well. So 3 for sure sacrifices, 4 if you count Benny. So Eddie 100% sacrificed himself, obviously, but it was kind of a stupid sacrifice in my opinion because, you know, Eddie didn't need to go back in. He could have just like left, but he wanted to distract him, I guess, longer for them to get whatever they needed to get done. The other people in the Upside Down. So I don't know. I feel like it was kind of unnecessary, but he definitely did sacrifice himself. And I feel like it was also like, what did he have? Like, I feel like in the back of his mind, Eddie was thinking, what did I have to live for? Like, how much do I have to live for if I don't go and sacrifice myself for, you know, Steve and Nancy and all them to get the job done when I get back into the real world, because everyone thinks I'm a murderer and I'm going to be in jail or whatever. So maybe he was thinking like, if I just go in here and do this, at least I'm doing something good on my way out. You know what I'm saying? So, but I didn't really like Eddie's sacrifice, but regardless, there's been sacrifices in Stranger Things. So, and technically Max, because she technically did die and she did sacrifice herself unintentionally because she wasn't planning on actually dying. So I guess maybe 5, I don't know. But there's, my point being, after all that yap session, is that in Stranger Things, there are a lot of sacrifices. And in season 5, there's 100% going to be more sacrifices. If I had to guess, there's not going to be more than 2, but you never know. We're going to talk about which characters could be the 2 sacrifices. And without further ado, let me talk about the first character I have written down. And we're going to go from least likely to most likely. So number 5, which is going to come up, is going to be the least likely to sacrifice himself out of the 5 characters, but they're all, in my opinion, pretty likely. Okay, coming in at number 5 is Hopper. So, like I said, he's the least likely out of these characters, but I do think, you know, there's a lot of people, there are a lot of characters in Stranger Things. I think he's up on the top of the list, you know, at number 5, because Hopper's already had 2 near-death experiences with death, and one of them was a sacrifice. And at the end of season 3, when he went out to fight that guy, whatever, and, you know, put his life on the line, literally almost died. So Hopper's already almost sacrificed himself, and he also almost died in season 2, episode 5, in the Dig Dug episode, where he was in the vines, in the tunnels, got trapped down. Luckily, Joyce and Bob came and saved the day, and, you know, saved his life. So he's already almost died. He's had a near-death sacrifice at the end of season 3, and there's a lot of different reasons why he would sacrifice himself. Like when you look at Hopper's backstory, whatever, he had a daughter and she had cancer and it broke him. And then he and his wife, I don't know if she was his wife or girlfriend or whatever, I'm assuming his wife, got to split up, divorce, whatever, and he left New York, where he was a detective, went to Hawkins, Indiana, became a chief of police, got addicted to drugs, alcohol, all that stuff, went downhill, let himself go, and then 11 showed up into his life and revived that spark of life in him. So in season 5, and we've seen in the trailer, him and 11 are together in a lot of different scenes. So if we see in season 5 where it's just 11 and Hopper in a certain situation, and it's like the final episode, and we see it, I could definitely see a scenario where Hopper sees 11 about to die, and he just jumps in front of her and sacrifices his life. I don't think Hopper's going to die, but if he does die, in my opinion, it's 100% going to be a sacrifice for his daughter. Like, he views 11 as his daughter, and he doesn't want to lose another daughter. So I feel like that's why it would make sense for Hopper to sacrifice himself, and I definitely wouldn't be surprised if he had the guts to do that, because he's already put his life on the line so many times. Even with the Demogorgon, like, he, in season 4, he fought a Demogorgon with a sword. Like, he had no choice, but, you know, he was in that situation. He's not afraid to put himself in the line of fire, so to speak. Also, time and time again in season 5, or in Stranger Things, not just in season 5, similar to Steve, Hopper has been viewed as the father figure of the group, or the protector. Like, Steve is viewed as a protector. Remember in season 2, Steve was like, you guys aren't going out there. Like, we're a team and we're sitting on the bench. He did the basketball analogy or whatever. I thought that was pretty funny. But Steve's always been a protector. Hopper's always been a protector. So if someone that they love is going to be in danger, they're going to be the protector in that situation, meaning their life is going to be more in danger, obviously. Okay. Number 4, I'm going to put Jonathan. I really wanted to put Jonathan higher, but these other 3 characters I just feel like are a little bit more likely. I think if Jonathan does die, it's going to be for Will Byers, but there's a lot of reasons why I think Jonathan sacrificing himself in season 5 makes a lot of sense. One of the biggest reasons is because a main character needs to die, and he is a main character in Stranger Things. So that's one of the reasons. Another reason is, in the last few seasons, I feel like since season 1, and then going into season 2, then going into season 3, and then going into season 4. In season 4 was definitely his worst season as a character, and it kind of went downhill a lot, and he didn't really have that big of an impact on the show. And it was just sort of awkward with his dynamic with Nancy and everything, and he started smoking weed, and Argyle, like, him and Argyle were funny, don't get me wrong, but I just feel like his impact on the show was very little in season 4, and we saw a few moments where he saw Will and really regretted, like, not being there for him, and like being so into just being a bum, basically. So I feel like I got that vibe from Jonathan, like he felt he needed to be more involved in Will's life. So similar to the Hopper and 11 situation, I feel like if Jonathan and Will are caught in a situation where Will's in danger, Jonathan could use his protective instincts, even for Nancy as well, to just jump in there, be a hero, sacrifice himself, and that would be probably the biggest death in Stranger Things ever, or one of them at least, up to that point. And if he dies, I could see him I could see a scenario where in season 5 the biggest character who dies is Jonathan. If they're not going to kill off like a main character like 11, Hopper, whatever, you know what I'm saying? So, and I do think his death would hit hard, and people would be like, damn, I didn't realize how much I actually cared for Jonathan. These other characters on the list are it would be much more impactful, but I feel like if Jonathan died, it would still be a big enough death to be the biggest death in season 5, because he's been there since season 1. He's had a dynamic with Will and Nancy that is just amazing. So if Will catches himself in that spot and Jonathan is there, similar to Hopper and 11, I think he could jump right in there. I think it would most likely be for Will. I think Jonathan would most likely sacrifice himself for Will, unless there was a scenario with Nancy, I guess, but I don't know. Steve's gonna be there with Nancy and Jonathan as well, so I feel like it would be more for Will rather than Nancy, but I definitely think it's a possibility of the Jonathan. So Jonathan's at number 4, Hopper's at number 5, Jonathan's at number 4, and at number 3, I'm going to put Will Byers. So there's several reasons to put Will Byers at number 3, which is pretty high up the list considering there's like 20 main characters in Stranger Things. I would say the biggest one is because his story started it all, and a lot of people have made theories, including myself, that it starts with Will, it ends with Will. You know, the whole upside down fiasco thing started with Will, he got captured, now it needs to end with Will. he needs to die for the connection to forever be gone, or something similar along those lines. If he gets into a situation where Vecna, the only reason Vecna is like invading the real world is because he wants that connection with Will, then Will, maybe he has to sacrifice himself. Like, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of reasons that you could go into, a lot of theories that you can make to support your argument that Will needs to sacrifice himself. And it wouldn't be for a specific person. Will would not sacrifice himself for Jonathan or for Joyce or for Nancy. Will would sacrifice himself for the world. And another character on this list is an assembler bro. I think we all know who that is. I do think it would be like a full circle moment, you know, with him starting the story and him ending it if he sacrificed himself. And I do think it would make a lot of sense. And I also think this is the type of death. These next 3 deaths are all in this boat, in my opinion. But this is the type of death that would break the internet, and people would talk about like, holy shit, Will Byers and Stranger Things actually died. Like, people who haven't watched the show in 5 years would remember Will Byers, the kid who got captured, and be like, holy shit, he died in the final season. I'm gonna watch. You know, that's the type of death that Will Byers would be, in my opinion. So the Duffers did say that season 5 is going to bring the story in full circle, and Will sacrificing himself to the Upside Down, or to close the Upside Down, would be exactly that. He also could feel some type of guilt for being that connection and always, you know, being involved with Vecna and the supernatural stuff that's going around, and feel like him giving up his life could end that. So obviously that connects to the fact that he could sacrifice himself to the Upside Down, or for the Upside Down to close it or whatever. But it also just connects to the whole entire story, that he feels the guilt of being the one that connects all of this, and he just feels the need to put his life on the line so it's gone forever. So Hopper at number 5, Jonathan at number 4, Will at number 3, in at number 2. I'm actually not going to put who you might think I'm going to put. I'm going to put 11 at number 2. And before I go any further, type in the comments before you skip who you think number 1 is. I don't know if everyone would guess it. Maybe you're thinking of someone else, but I'm very confident that number 1 has a high chance of happening. But number 2 is going to be 11, higher than Will Byers. I do think 11 sacrificing himself is definitely higher than Will Byers. And I don't really need to go into that much depth of why 11 sacrificed herself in Stranger Things season 5 makes a lot of sense, but I'll just go over the quick points. Similar to Will, she could sacrifice herself to close the Upside Down because she's the only one capable of it. If Will doesn't have powers, Will sacrificing himself could be like Will sacrificing himself to Vecna, for Vecna to finally go in the Upside Down to give 11 the time to close the Upside Down, you know, something like that. But in 11's scenario, she could literally go inside the Upside Down and use her powers to close it because she's the one who opened it. So that would also be considered a full circle moment that the Duffers referred to in the interview whenever they said that. So, and also the hero sacrifice, the main character, she's already sacrificed herself once before in season 1. She lived, but she sacrificed herself to the Demogorgon and ended up going to the Upside Down, then escaping the Upside Down, etc., etc. So she's already had so many near-death experiences. She's put her life on the line for so many times for her friends. Why not do it again in season 5? And maybe she gets into a more dangerous situation where it's not possible for her to survive. And I do think there's a small chance that it could be to save Hopper and not just the world, but I do think that no matter which way she sacrificed herself, even if she intentionally sacrificed herself for Hopper or for Mike, it would be for the world as well because it is 11. So she would probably be in a situation where she's fighting Vecna or closing the gate or something. So yeah, like I could see a scenario similar to Billy. Not similar to Billy, but just hear me out. I could see a scenario where 11's closing the gate with both of her hands like this, and then she sees Mike getting attacked by a Demogorgon or something, and she keeps one hand and then throws the other one over there to protect Mike, and then she gets hit with something because she wasn't paying attention, and that's how she dies. So I feel like that would be a pretty cool death. But like I said, there's not many things I could say that you guys don't already know that makes sense for 11 to sacrifice herself. I just think she's not the most likely to sacrifice herself in season 5. In fact, I think number 1, the most likely character to sacrifice himself for another character or for other characters in season 5 is Steve Harrington. Steve's arc in Stranger Things has heroic sacrifice written all over it. I mean, how many times has he already put his life on the line? In season 2, there was a moment, I was doing my rewatch. I remember this scene, don't get me wrong, but when I rewatched it, I was like, what in the heck was he thinking? What was Steve Harrington thinking in this situation? He had a bat, and Dustin, Max, and Lucas were in the bus, and the Demogorgon was outside. And he was like, the Demogorgon needs bait. So he literally just left the bus with his bat with metal screws in it, and was prepared to be the bait for the Demogorgon. He just walked outside the bus, told the kids to stay inside, and he went out there. And that's when Dustin and Max were looking through the window, and Dustin was like, he's awesome, you know, talking about Steve. And like, that's when we thought Dustin looked up to Steve and everything. But that's sort of where the Steve and Dustin duo like officially started. But he went out there with just a bat facing these Demogorgons, and he put his life on the line. He's already done crazy shit like that so many times, too many times to count, you know what I'm saying? But he's already put his life on the line so many times. In season 4, episode 6, when he dove into the Lover's Lake all the way down to the upside down gate, went outside, then he got attacked by bats, but he was the one who said, I'll go down there. He's just put his life on the line. It's not far-fetched to say at all that Steve's gonna put his life on the line again in season 5, but this time go too far and end up dying. In season 1, we heard the duffer say that Steve Harrington was supposed to die off, but we liked his character so much that we decided to keep him in. We thought his arc could be pretty good. And man, were they freaking right. But in season 5, it could be that full circle moment where Steve's arc finally ends. His transformation from the arrogant douchebag jock to the selfless hero would be the perfect completion to his arc that I've ever seen in television. And Steve is in one of those unique scenarios where it wouldn't be obvious who he would sacrifice himself for, because he's going to be hanging around Jonathan and Nancy. So he can see a scenario where he sees Jonathan and Nancy in love, and Jonathan's in trouble or Nancy's in trouble, and he jumps in front and sacrifices himself so they could live happily ever after. And there could also be a scenario where Dustin's in trouble, and he sees Dustin fighting for his life, and he jumps in there. And he could also be in a scenario where everyone's in trouble, or the group that he's protecting is in trouble, and he's protecting kids, and he just jumps in front of whatever's attacking them and sacrifices his life. So I don't think it's far-fetched at all to say Steve is number 1 on top of the who's most likely to sacrifice himself list. And I also think he should be number 1 because of the things that he's already done and the amount of risk that he's put himself in and the amount of times he put himself in that line of fire. Now I'm going to rank these just really quickly based off how likely I want them to happen, or how much I want them to happen. Number 5 would be least likely, or number 5 would be least wanted. Number 1 would be most wanted scenario for me. So number 5, the person who I wouldn't want to sacrifice themselves would be 11. So because she's my favorite character, if you guys are new here. So 11 would be at number 5. Hopper would be at number 4 for sure, because I don't want him to die. And then I would put Steve at number 3. Then I would put Jonathan at number 2. And at number 1, I would put Will. I believe if Will died, it would be so good for the story and for the virality of the show in numbers that it would just break the internet. Same thing with 11. I just don't want her to die because she's my favorite character. But anyone on this list, it would break the internet, besides maybe Jonathan. That's the list, guys. That's enough yapping. I just yapped for 30 minutes. Obviously, it's not going to be a 30-minute long video, but I yapped for 30 minutes, so yeah. Let me know what you guys think about this list. If you think I'm crazy or you think this is a good list, if you would replace anyone, if you would change the order, if there's different reasons why you think that this person wouldn't sacrifice himself, let me know in the comments. But I appreciate you guys watching the video, and if you guys want more YouTube videos, be sure to comment some ideas in the comments so I have some ideas to go off of. And yeah, I'll try to respond to as many comments as you guys have, so if you have any questions, let me know. Make sure to drop a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and join my Discord. And most importantly, guys, just have a great rest of your day, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace out.